Michael, how are you?
I found something really interesting.
The whole housing market is propped up on these bad loans. They will fail.
The housing market is rock solid.
It's a time bomb.
Hi, welcome to What the Flick. I am Christy. This is Alonzo. This is Matt. We're going to talk about the Golden Globe nominated Big Short. We're going to do Golden Globe nominations at some point this morning because it's Hollywood's second biggest morning. But The Big Short got a bunch of nominations today. Is it that good? Can you explain it to us?
Yes, so The Big Short is based off the Michael Lewis book. He wrote Moneyball. He wrote The Big Short, which is about the financial crisis of 2007, which involves a lot of very complicated concepts. And this movie sets out to kind of explain how it all went down, how some guys predicted it, how some guys bet against the American economy, and they turned it into an alternately very funny and sometimes infuriating movie. Let's watch the trailer.
You know what? I'm pissed off. American people are getting screwed by the big banks.
And I am getting madder and madder.
It's unbelievable.
Then this guy walks into my office and says,
"There's some shady stuff going down." All the banks were having a big old party. A few outsiders saw when no one else could. The whole world economy might collapse.
I'm sure the world's banks have more incentives than greed.
"You're wrong."
So this is an enormous cast, and I don't know who you would say is a star. There are several movies this year, like Spotlight, where it's the big ensemble.
It's an ensemble, yeah.
So you've got your Christian Bale, and your Steve Carell, and your Ryan Gosling, and your Brad Pitt, of course, who's also a producer on it. So it takes this topic that's really, really daunting and really complicated, and it has fun with the fact that it's daunting and complicated by explaining things to us in really overly simplified and very, very funny ways.
Right.
So my favorite example of this is like, you don't want to hear about this crap, so here's Margot Robbie in a bathtub.
Yeah,
drinking
exactly,
champagne,
right?
and she looks like just devastatingly gorgeous.
Right. Want to know how CDOs work?
Right.
Here's Anthony Bourdain to explain it.
That actually was very helpful.
No,
the thing with the fish with Anthony Bourdain was very helpful.
No, and I learned a lot of stuff. The thing with Selena Gomez playing blackjack, like those parts of the film where they literally a character will look at the camera and say, and now here's so and so to explain.
Right.
You know,
Ryan Gosling does a lot of that. He serves as the narrator here, and he spends a lot of time saying, he's the one who kind of introduces us, like, okay, you don't understand what the synthetic CDO is. Here's Selena Gomez and this other professor,
behavioral economist
playing blackjack,
playing blackjack to explain it for you. And it lays it out, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things this movie does really well, is it helps us understand the decay and the alternate, either both stupidity and fraud that was happening,
and hubris
and hubris
that
and I think one of the things this movie resonated for me is because you see Steve Carell in this role playing Michael Baum, who's one of the traders who had predicted this and was trying to short the economy, so to speak, get really worked up about this and really angry at the way the system works. And I think that that's your character that you kind of identify with. And I was feeling that with him. He's also going through some devastated crisis in his past that you learn about. But he's, his wife keeps calling him, he's this crusader, and he rants about how the banks treat their customers. And so this thing comes along where he realizes, oh, there's kind of this rotten core at the middle of the mortgage securities industry, and they could capitalize on it. But as he gets deeper into it, he starts getting morally offended by that, and that resonated with me. I found this movie to be really powerful and funny and interesting, and then infuriating.
Right. The meat of it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of this movie. Like, for example, my favorite part of Casino is where they explain how Vegas works. All the sort of behind-the-scenes stuff. And so to take this nonfiction book about subject matter that most of us have a hard time, what's a credit default swap? Trying to wrap our head around it for the person in that world is tricky. I admire the chutzpah of what McKay is trying to do here. And I think that there are chunks of it that are really successful and really do kind of walk you through the steps. I don't know that the whole thing works, though, because I think, for starters, I think there are just some elements that I still don't get. Maybe I'm just an idiot.
That's what we write for a living.
There are still some aspects of the financial world that don't quite work. And then, I don't know, just weirdly enough, at some point you realize that it's structured like one of those movies about somebody who's going to invent something or who's going to fix something, and everybody else thinks they're crazy and no one believes in them, and then at the end, yay, they win, they invent, the polio vaccine or whatever. And in this one, it's like, yay, they were right. Oh, the whole economy collapsed. Fuck. Yeah. Which is
what happened.
Which is exactly, and it's a daring way to make a movie to build it that way. But I don't know that the film earns it at that point because I don't know that it's as sharp as it could have been.
I found it a little scattered, and I often like movies like that, like Magnolia, where it's a million different perspectives and they're all tied together. But this just didn't feel as cohesive. It felt like, oh yeah, that person's in it, and you forget who all was in it for a while, and I don't know that they are all tied together in a way that is compelling. Like individually it has its moments, but it just feels a bit scattered to me from a narrative perspective. But I learned a lot. I appreciate the playfulness of it. I appreciate the structural fun it has. I was just realizing, when you were talking about Ryan Gosling, talking to the camera or whatever, there's like this whole time-space continuum thing where this is all taking place in 2004, 2005, 2006, but they'll introduce Margot Robbie, who is hot now.
Right.
I just realized that, like, oh yeah.
No, she was hot then too.
No, she was hot.
We just didn't know of her.
Hot.
Yeah.
So people who like Selena Gomez. So like,
I hope this movie makes.
fun.
I hope this movie makes people angry.
I'm sure it
I
will.
mean, Inside Job made people angry, but Inside Job was seen by probably a fraction of the people who will go see a movie on the same topic that has Brad Pitt in it. So if you don't have strong opinions about why we should break up the banks or why there needs to be, why Glass-Steagall needs to be reinstated or why there needs to be stronger financial legislation, see this movie, get pissed off, and find out what the steps are to try and keep this from happening again.
Right.
Because certainly nothing is in place now to stop this from happening again. Nobody learned anything from this.
Yeah, this is a good double feature with 99 Homes. If you're breaking things down that are complicated and making you angry about them.
This movie, I'm more positive on than you guys. More bullish on this.
The
stock of this movie. This movie made me think of some of George Carlin's classic material, in that it's really funny. And then the more you think about it, the more you get pissed because you're like, oh man, God damn it, he's right, right? And this is a movie that is using comedy to talk about a real issue, and yes, it is scattered, and I think because it's trying to show the different stories of these different traders that are only in some cases tangentially connected.
Yeah, many of them never meet each other.
Right.
They just happen to find the same conclusion at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Christian Bale's character specifically is, you start off rooting for these guys, like, oh, these guys see something nobody else sees, and boy, they're going to make a bunch of money out of it. And then, you realize partway through, like, Christian Bale's character especially becomes this Cassandra-like figure that he almost becomes this pariah in the community because now no one's listening to him. And these guys end up underestimating the fraud that goes with the stupidity that got everybody there.
Right, because it's not just the banks; it's also the people that are giving these bonds the AAA ratings.
Right, like they start out
the SEC not overseeing anything.
We start out realizing like, oh, okay, nobody's looking at this stuff, and really, what Christian Bale's character does is he's just looking at this stuff that nobody's bothering to look at, right? And it's, oh, I see something no one's even paying attention to, right? And so you realize early on in the film, oh God, everybody in the industry is a moron. And then once things start going the way everybody, or our heroes have been predicting and are planning to capitalize on, what they've underestimated is the chicanery of the banks,
of the system,
who are all like, oh, well, we're going to lie to make this okay. And that's the part that is morally repugnant. And that really worked for me. That's the part that, like, I was kind of spun up after the film. Like, fucking assholes. Fucking bankers. I feel like Jake. Of course these guys are wrong.
No, I totally agree with you. I love what this movie wants to be and is aiming to be. I just don't think it completely gets there. But I'm glad it exists.
Yes.
McKay actually has kind of touched on this before, if you remember the closing credits of The Other Guys.
Yeah.
All those graphs about, Ponzi schemes and the stock market and all that sort of stuff.
He's a very smart guy.
He's obviously interested in this material.
Also, we should mention that this film won our editing award at our LA Film Critics voting just this past weekend. So it moves. It's over 2 hours, but it's really breezy. It moves very well.
And I want to point out Carell's performance specifically. Like he put on had to be 20, 30 pounds for this role.
And bad hair.
Yeah. And we see a more emotional, a very angry performance from him.
Yeah.
And then there's one small scene with him and Marissa Tomei that I found to be devastating.
Okay.
There's that scene like
on the phone.
No, later on.
No, later on.
Oh, okay.
Like when he's talking to her. Like there's a scene where they're talking and he's talking about his brother, and that was devastating.
Okay.
I think it's arguably Carell's best performance.
Well, it might be meatier and angrier. I mean, he's done a lot of more dramatic stuff in recent years, but I've never seen him angry like this, perhaps, right?
But it's not all just one note. Like you see the anger in him, but you also see him like confused and hurt. Like he takes all of this stuff, and what happens in, especially towards the end is like there's pressure to sell their default swaps, and he's hurt by how the economy works. Like he takes it very personally. Like, and at one point, Gosling's character tells him, like, you guys believe in the system, you're not there yet, right? Gosling's character is very cynical, right? Carell is like a crusader is, like he's optimistic, like he believes in something, and everything he believes in turns out to be wrong.
And the smart thing the movie does is, I think if these characters were just sort of sitting by while Rome burned, we would hate them too. But you see them all at some point actively try to explain to somebody in power, no, this is what's happening, and this is what's gonna happen, and no one will listen to them. No one cares. Nobody wants to know.
Carell's scene with the woman at the rating agency, at Standard & Poor, is amazing because it's like he's almost bargaining, like he can't accept the reality of it. And then when he's meeting with that guy at the casino at the dinner, the guy, I can't remember the actor's name.
Yes,
who was one of the lions in Man with the Iron Fist. He is really like he's getting more and more incredulous and horrified, and he portrays that so well. He's got the advantage of this character who wears his heart on his sleeve and blows up and everything, but all of those emotions feel real.
And Finn Wittrock's scene with the woman at the SEC that he's just like,
right.
So this is a flawed film, and it doesn't reach its potential, but you should totally see it. I think for the conversations you'll have afterwards, and for what if you are as dopey as me about I didn't know until this movie what a subprime mortgage is.
Right.
Now I know.
Now explain it to us.
A subprime mortgage is when somebody who does not have great income or collateral gets a mortgage anyway. And so a ton of subprime mortgages is a time bomb waiting to go off.
There's a Jenga scene that's very useful as a visual aid. Okay, so your number then, Alonzo?
I gave it a 5.5.
6.5.
6.5. So yeah, there's a lot to like here. It made me want to love it, but I do admire it, and you should totally see it.
I say 6. Matt, you're way higher.
They're haters. I give it an 8.5. I think it's excellent.
Okay, so our average is a 7.
And what did I say it was? 83%.
I think it might be rolling out.
Yeah, it's 7 screens this weekend, but wider in January.
Go see it.
Bye-bye.